Oh, that's good there, good. Expansive bill run. Maybe just rolls it a bit tighter, but it still lands. There from Wilder. Good left hook as well from Wilder.
Oh, it's gone down. He's gone down. He's gone down.
Hey, it's Top Boxing News.
D'ailleurs, peut-être un peu plus chez Viviane.
Et là, moi, il va se faire.
Well, I thought I'd start out this video with a bit of a talent search, a bit of a prospect watch. A prospect watch when it comes to young up-and-comers in the sport of women's boxing. You see, in the sport of men's boxing, and it's all one sport at the end of the day, and I really feel that it should be reported as such, and the problem is that it's not. But in the sport of men's boxing, you see any variety of stories that keep you updated with young up-and-coming male fighters like Ryan Garcia, Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, the list goes on. The news
Sources and
media, you know, the pundits, they keep you posted on the progression of those young up-and-coming male fighters. But in the case of young up-and-coming women fighters, you don't see that same effort, you don't see that same push. And we make it a habit here on the relay to deliver the news evenly, that if there are talented young female fighters out there, just fighters overall, if there are any young talented fighters out there, we make it a habit to report it to you, whether it's women's boxing or men's boxing, because at the end of the day, it's all boxing. So let's get into it. And the first prospect we're going to start off with is one that hasn't even made her professional debut yet. New Zealand middleweight Rosanna Cox, who is under the guidance, under the management of MTK Global. You'll find that many fighters have very good things to say about MTK Global and how they get things done. Now, what's particularly intriguing about Rosanna Cox, aside from, you know, her aesthetic qualities, because she's a very beautiful girl, let's be honest, but aside from that, this is a fighter that has a good amateur background, and she does intend on debuting in a very hot weight class. The reason the weight class is hot is because there's already a super fight there. Talking about the Clarissa Shields and Christina Hammer fight. Whenever you have a weight class like that, with that kind of a fight permeating within the weight class, it draws eyes, it draws attention to what else is out there. And what else do we have out there? We have another attractive young up-and-comer in Raquel Miller, and Rosanna Cox just accents that more and more. That while Clarissa Shields and Christina Hammer draw in attention to their fight, that's going to make people look at what else is out there, and they're going to find very soon that Rosanna Cox is out there, and they might like what they see. Now, Rosanna Cox is a native New Zealander, but she's based out of England, and she's made a decision to pursue professional boxing as her career. So this is one to look out for. You know, Rosanna Cox, she might be easy on the eyes, but she might actually be bringing something to the table in terms of technique, in terms of implementation, because she does have a decent amateur background. So you might want to watch the middleweight division for Rosanna Cox. And before we move on from Rosanna Cox, I want to highlight this, and I want to further elaborate upon it, that I don't want this to get lost in translation. I don't want this to be miscommunicated, misconstrued, any of that. When you see that I'm highlighting the aesthetic qualities, essentially the good looks of a fighter like Rosanna Cox, that's not said in any way, shape, or form to diminish her abilities in the ring, so much as to elaborate upon how her aesthetic qualities might garner her commercial success, because she may have universal appeal. A lot of people are going to look at her, they may have never seen a fight, and they'll say, wow, that's a good-looking girl right there. And when they find out that this good-looking girl has a good amateur background and knows how to box, she's good at what she does, when they see that, it blows them away that much more. In a way, it's synergy.
It amplifies
This is
it.
the kind of thing that can land you Everlast ads and Under Armour ads and Nike ads, Adidas ads, you know, those kinds of things that can help your career along because you've got universal appeal. And I feel like, you know, Rosanna Cox, among others, she's got that kind of appeal. I could see that face plastered on a billboard for an for Everlast or Adidas or somebody. I could see that happening in that way. That's why I'm highlighting the aesthetic value, not, you know, the aesthetic qualities, not just the boxing, not just what's going on in the ring, but also what else can happen outside of the ring to help that fighter's career along. Oftentimes we hear more accomplished, seasoned professionals like Heather Hardy, Amanda Serrano, Clarissa Shields, saying things along the lines of they want equal pay. And it just so happens that in the sport of boxing, it's not a salary job. Your pay is determined by your marquee value, and your marquee value essentially is your ability to pull in a large audience. How many people can you get to come to see your fight, to talk about your fight, to watch your fight on TV? Things like that. And something like that, when you're trying to appeal to an audience that broad, it does help the process along. It does help your exposure if you got some aesthetic value. I mean, let's not be naive. Now, yet another fighter that I want to talk about is Elvina White, who debuted back in 2017 and has a professional record of 3-0 fights out of the super lightweight division. That's 140 pounds. The same division where Jessica McCaskill currently holds the WBC title, and the same division where Victoria Bustos currently holds the IBF title. Erika Farias is also there. Ana Laura Esteche is also there. And in her last fight, Amanda Serrano fought for what was the vacant WBO title in that same weight class. So there's some players in the super lightweight division that Elvina White might want to target. Elvina is a native of Austria, but her current residence is the United States. She debuted in 2017, fought once and fought 2 times last year. She's coming off a win over the seasoned Jasmine Clarkson. Jasmine Clarkson's been in there with a lot of fucking people, including Katie Taylor. Elvina squared off against her, and she showed some virtues. I mean, it's still very early to tell just what kind of fighter Elvina White is shaping into, but she showed promise. She showed a solid jab, good right hand, a good understanding of just where her range is relative to that of her opponent, where both fighters are in the ring, distance, spacing, rudimentary components to landing your shots and not just swinging it air.
You don't want to do that.
Elvina does appear to be a solid fighter, and she could develop into a credible threat for anybody holding the belt at 140 pounds. And yet another up-and-comer that I want to talk about is a homegrown talent from right here in the United States. Talking about Tiara Brown, who is 7-0. She's a little bit more ahead than the last 2 prospects that I talked about. She's a little bit more ahead in her career than they are. She's got 7 professional victories. 5 of them came by way of knockout. And she's coming off a win over the very experienced Diana Santana. And that's what really grabbed my attention about Tiara Brown. Every opponent that she's faced up until that point was the kind of opponent that you would have expected her to face. But there was a big step up in competition once she squared off with Diana Santana. You gotta realize, Diana Santana is a seasoned veteran, the kind of seasoned veteran that can give any young up-and-comer a whole lot of problems and, quite honestly, upset them. Diana Santana has a professional record of 36 wins, 10 losses. That's a combined total of 46 professional fights, and you would have never known it had you watched Tiara Brown in action against her. Tiara showed everything. She showed good defense, good offense, fighting on the front foot and the back foot, moving laterally, not being a stationary target, while at the same time, good judgment of good distance, good spacing, good counter punching, rolling shots, slipping shots, blocking shots, and countering in kind. Tiara Brown had the look of a far more experienced professional than she actually is, because ahead of the fight, she only had 6 professional fights. But you would have never known that had you just watched the tape on her and watched her in action. She looked sharp against Diana Santana.
Sharper than you would have expected.
To put things into context, we saw what happened to the highly touted amateur standout turned pro, Natasha Jonas, when she squared off against Vivian Obanoff, a seasoned professional in her own respect. We saw how sometimes it doesn't always work out the way you think it will. Natasha Jonas was upset by Vivian Obanoff, who you would have thought was going to lose the fight, but that's not the case. And Diana Santana has that many more pro fights than Vivian Obanoff, that much more experience than Vivian Obanoff. Yet against Tiara Brown, she couldn't do nothing with her. It was incredible to watch a fighter who only has 6 professional fights looking so dominant against a vet. Now, Tiara fights out of the super featherweight division, a division that really has no shortage of talent and no shortage of champions. That's the same division that Eva Wallstrom holds the WBC title, Eva Brodnicka holds the WBO title, the hard-punching Maiva Hamadouche holds the IBF title, and the versatile Hyun Lee Choi holds the WBO title. Ramona Cunha is also there, and Melissa St. Ville is also there. So there are plenty of good scalps to go around for Tiara Brown, provided that she lines herself up for a title shot sometime in 2019. There's plenty of good scalps to go around, and she's got the makings of a legitimate and credible threat to any of the champions and the contenders in those ranks. So Tiara Brown, out of the United States, is definitely someone to watch out for. So these are just 3 of the prospects that I've got my eyes on. Keep your eyes peeled for Tiara Brown, Elvina White, and Rosanna Cox in the upcoming months. And in other news, it appears that Manny Pacquiao could see Mikey Garcia as a potential future foe. WBA regular welterweight champion Manny Pacquiao is looking to face the best opponents possible in the remaining years of his pro career. Last year, Pacquiao aligned himself with the powerful advisor and the premier boxing champions, Al Heyman.
We know.
Heyman promotes numerous welterweights who could face Pacquiao, like Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, Errol Spence, Sean Porter, Adrian Broner, and several others. Now, with the political issues pushed to the side and both fighting under the PBC banner, Pacquiao believes the contest can be made. We have strong opponents for the future, including Mikey Garcia. Now that we are under the same promoter, I think it would be more feasible to make now, and he would bring a good fight, Pacquiao said to Bain Sports. Well, the first angle of this I want to discuss is the value of the fight. You have to fast forward. You got to put your thinking cap on and fast forward. In order for this fight to become a reality, right? Mikey Garcia versus Manny Pacquiao. 1, Manny would have to be successful against Broner, thereby raising his stock even further.
Proving he still got it.
2, Mikey Garcia would likely have to beat Errol Spence, survive, not just survive him, but beat him in order for this to become a reality. Because if he goes in there with Errol and gets his ass kicked, like a lot of people think he's going to get his ass kicked, if that's the case, I don't imagine he's going to go from an ass kicking with Errol into a hard fight with Manny. I don't imagine that. So if the fight is to come off, hypothetically speaking, then it would hinge on Mikey beating Errol, however unlikely that is. But it would hinge on Mikey beating Errol and Manny beating Broner. Now, hypothetically speaking, put your thinking caps on. If that's the case, the value of this fight could be extraordinary. You have to consider it. You gotta fast forward, hit the fast forward button, and put yourself in an environment where Manny Pacquiao has already beaten Adrian Broner, and hypothesize that he beats him in good fashion.
Exciting fashion.
Then hypothesize that Mikey Garcia does the unthinkable and unseats Errol Spence. Can you imagine how his fans are going to react to that, and how many more fans he would have if it happened that way? Essentially, what I'm getting at is a pay-per-view between these two guys in that kind of an environment could, it could be of great value. It really could. Because Manny Pacquiao has a solid base already. There's already plenty of people out there that still like him, still love him, still feel very passionate about him, and still talk him up in the boxing groups and the YouTube boxing community. Manny has his fans. That is established. But also imagine that you pull in the Chicano fan, the Mexican-American fans, and the people over there in Mexico, too. They might be with Mikey, too. But you got to factor that in. That if he was to beat Errol Spence, if he was to pull off this miracle, if he were to do the unthinkable, he would have that many more fans who were high on him. And you could combine those two fan bases at that point and shell out one hell of a pay-per-view event. So the fight has the potential to be huge. Here's the thing. A lot of things have got to happen for that to a lot of things have got to happen first for that to happen. And I'm of the opinion that Mikey's not going to pull off this miracle. I'm of the opinion that Mikey's going to get beat, and he's likely going to go back down to either 140 or 135. That's what I think is likelier than not to happen. In the case of Manny, it's a little different. I think that Manny's fight is a more winnable fight for him, because of the stylistic matchup, which I've talked about several times, so I'm not going to touch on it again here. But I feel like Manny's fight is more winnable, whereas Mikey's fight is it's conceivable that he's going to lose that thing. Whether he loses it by a little or by a lot, it's conceivable that he loses that thing. Putting a Pacquiao fight somewhere out there in the realm of kind of unlikely, at least right now.
Other shit gotta happen.
So I ain't even gonna get into a breakdown as far as, how the fight would look. You understand the aesthetic of the fight between Manny and between Mikey, because too much shit has to happen before it even comes to that. At minimum, the most I could say is a fight between those two guys, depending on the environment, yes, it does have the potential to be huge. But with so many intangibles and the fight itself hinging on so many different things, I don't even view it as likely right now. A part of me feels that if Manny Pacquiao were to unseat Adrian Broner, whatever, if he is to beat him and make short work of him, whatever. But a part of me feels like if Manny makes it past Broner, what we can expect to see is maybe Manny versus Danny Garcia. That Garcia. Maybe we'll see that Garcia fight, Manny Pacquiao, provided Manny beats Broner. And as far as Mikey, I feel that, whether he gets thrashed or he loses, but he doesn't lose too badly. He loses, but not by much or whatever. That it's not as bad as everybody's making out to be. In any event, I feel like if Mikey loses that Errol Spence fight, he may just go back down to 140 pounds or 135. I mean, he still has the WBC title there, so there's that to consider. Granted that he can always throw it in the air the same way he always does with the IBF. I think he's thrown 2 of their titles in the air, the one at 140 and the one at 135. So there's always that he maybe he throws that title in the air, but at least right now, he's still got it. Is that an insight into where we may see Mikey next? I mean, otherwise, why still hang on to it? That's why a lot of these thoughts may be coming off to you watching this video as scatterbrained, because depending on the outcome of a Mikey versus Spence fight, depending on the outcome, that can greatly affect what comes after. And the same applies to a Pacquiao-Broner fight. It can greatly affect what happens after, depending on who wins. I mean, for Christ's sakes, it looks like some people are still holding out hope that the winner of Pacquiao versus Broner will get a Mayweather fight. Even though every time they ask Mayweather, he's retired, and every time we turn around, he's boxing with a guy that ain't even a boxer. So it's like, it's just in the air. At minimum, what you could say is that a Mikey Garcia versus Manny Pacquiao fight, under the right circumstances, does have the potential to be a mega fight, like a legitimate, bona fide, United States pay-per-view attraction mega fight. It does have that potential, but so many things have to happen in just such a way that it's not even worth, it's just, it's too soon to know. It's too soon to know. One thing that's on the back of my mind is, I do feel that the Adrian Broner versus Manny Pacquiao pay-per-view has the most potential to be a big success of all the ones that are coming up. That one has the most potential to be a success. And if Manny does beat Adrian Broner, I imagine that he's going to be the centerpiece of their welterweight division. And all their guys are going to be focusing on him and no one else. That means Keith Thurman, that means Sean Porter, that means Errol Spence. That if Manny beats Broner, all those guys are going to be focused on him.
And getting that fight.
And you know what? All of you guys can't get him. Everybody can't get what they want. And I see an environment where things can
plateau even worse.
Things can end up being even more stagnant at 147 because so many guys might end up chasing the same guy. Things can end up more stagnant than they already are because these guys have been on the same side of the street the whole time and they ain't fought each other yet and they really ain't about to. So add Pacquiao to the equation and they reshift their focus and they all set their sights on him, even though all of y'all ain't going to get him. That's yet another possibility, another scenario as far as what the topographical environment might be at the PBC if Manny wins. That at minimum is possible. At minimum, it is possible that we still won't get the unification fights that we've been asking for from the guys on that side of the street, because if Manny wins, each one of them guys is going to stand online trying to get a Pacquiao fight instead of fighting each other.